Hello, folks. Thanks for joining us. Missy and I are going to talk about the article that we wrote in the feature series on trauma-informed practice that came out in Joford in November, December. So we're focusing on responding to trauma in and through physical education. Before we do that, we're going to introduce ourselves so you know a bit about us before we get into a conversation. So Missy, over to you.
Hi, Sue, thanks. I'm Missy Parker. I currently live in Ireland, obviously without an Irish accent. And I have been here and taught at the University of Limerick for the last 8 years. Prior to that, I was at the University of Northern Colorado in Greeley, Colorado. I began my career as an elementary and middle school physical education teacher and continued to teach children both in school and in after school programs, actually throughout my entire career. Sue, how about you? What was your background?
Hi, Missy. So I'm currently a professor and associate department chair at Ohio State University. If you can't already tell, my accent is not from the US, so originally from England. I taught physical education for 4 years in England at the secondary level. I also taught at a school for students with moderate learning difficulties and was the physical education teacher there. Came to the US 29 years ago. Yeah. And when I came here, I was working for, I worked for an organization that focused on adventure activities for people with disabilities, and did that for a number of years before coming back for my PhD and ending up at Ohio State. So like you, I've worked with young people in a variety of different settings. So we're going to switch into a conversation now about some questions that Missy and I posed for each other to get you to understand a little bit more about us and how we are working with.
Before that, we talk a little bit about the article itself, just to give people an idea of what we wrote, what we thought we were writing.
Great point, Missy. Over to you.
Our article, what we wrote was about strategies for responding to trauma that could be used by physical education teachers while they were teaching or during physical education. We present 6 strategies, all that we think can help teachers, help students when responding to trauma. The first of those strategies is to really know yourself, to critically reflect on who you are as a teacher and what has shaped that. What experiences do you bring with you as a teacher? How were you educated as a teacher? What do you think is important? What do you believe in? What were your experiences in physical education, in sport, in school? And then look at how those can and do impact how and what you teach in physical education. Secondly, we talk about what we think is critically important about knowing the context, not only of your children, of the children who come to, and young people who come to your school, who attend your school, but the context in which the school exists. Take a walk around the neighborhood. What is in the area? Are all the shops vibrant and active, and do they support children and youth coming in? Or is the neighborhood boarded up, or they limit the number of students who are allowed in the shop at one time? What are the opportunities? What parks are nearby? What other athletic or recreational facilities are close by? Know the context. Is it a gang-related neighborhood? Do they have to cross gang boundaries to get to school or to get to other places? Know what is there and how that impacts the children in your school. And the third strategy we have is to build relationships with students. It's one thing to know your students during class, fundamentally know their names, but to know your students during class, what they like, what they're scared of, what they enjoy, but also start to know them outside of class. Who do they play with at recess? Do they play with others at recess? What games are their favorite? What sports do they play outside of school? What clubs or groups do they belong to? Really start to build relationships with them as people, not just as somebody who attends your class once or twice a week.
Great points, Missy. Our fourth strategy is building community in your classroom so that students understand themselves, they understand each other, they know their strengths, they know the areas where they have some challenges, shall we say, and that they build community. They feel safe, they feel respected, they feel valued as a whole. Building community can't just be a one-off. It can't be something you do at the beginning of the school year and then don't touch it again until the following school year. Community has to be nurtured. So taking time to do that. Also, our fifth strategy is focusing your program and your teaching on social emotional learning. How can we help our students to understand and develop socially and emotionally so that they can build these lifelong skills? The last one is focusing on pedagogies of affect. That is pedagogies that bring to the forefront the affective domain. Not ignoring physical and cognitive, psychomotor, other domains, but bringing to the forefront the affective domain so that we're helping students understand affective and how it impacts the personal and social responsibility, the social emotional learning.
Wow. Question. We've talked about this, I guess we've known each other professionally for years. And we've talked about this forever, I think. But what triggered this for you? What raised for you the notion that responding to trauma or strategies for helping children respond to trauma was important?
I think this started early on in my career. My first teaching job, you know, you go through your undergraduate career and you're learning everything. You think you're coming out and you're the hot shot. And I get out in my first job and I realize all the children that I'm teaching, they're all different. They're all bringing strengths. They all have different challenges. And so really starting to focus on children first, and then teaching them through physical education. That developed the more I started working with students with disabilities. And I guess the foundation for all of that is a strong desire to be socially just in what I do and in how I teach physical education. So I think it's been there all along. It really came to the forefront, understanding or using trauma-informed practice over the last 2 to 3 years through professional development, some work I've been doing with other colleagues. And I started to understand it from a trauma perspective and being able to take what I'd been doing and what was important to me and align it with trauma-informed practice.
Okay.
How about you, Missy?
Well, kind of like you, I think this has really been with me my entire career. My first teaching job was in Atlanta, and interestingly, I taught in 2 very different schools. One was volunteer and one was paid, but I taught in a paid position at elementary and middle school PE, a private Catholic school in a very affluent area of Atlanta. At the same time, I taught 2 nights a week in a middle school, home ec, actually, not PE, home ec, in a middle school in one of the most economically disadvantaged areas of Atlanta, an area that experienced high crime rates, lots of drug related violence, lots of violence. And I realized that these were children. In both situations, they were all children. They all came with strengths and they all came with needs. And it was incumbent upon us to figure out how to foster those strengths and respond to their needs. And so in some form or fashion, I think I've been trying to respond to this my entire teaching career through physical education. yeah, it was kind of what it was supposed to be about. Not that I found an answer, but I've tried to work on it.
Great answers. So why do you think it's important for physical education teachers to engage with trauma-informed practices?
I think it's our responsibility as teachers. We both talked about just a minute ago, we teach children. We may do it through physical education. We may do it through any other subject. There are content. We teach children and youth. And as such, I think I have a firm belief ever since I was in undergraduate school that we teach the whole child. That includes the cognitive and it includes the affective. And a lot of these skills are affective skills to build resilience, to build strength, to build skills in socially dealing with others and themselves. And I think it was Alfie Kahn who said that we have a moral responsibility to develop good people, not just good learners. And so that it is who we should be as teachers. And that has fundamentally guided what I think we should do in physical education. And I think part of that is, it's not necessarily happening outside the gym, not necessarily happen in other environments. And so I can control, as Don Hellison used to say, I can control what happens in my gym. I can't control what happens outside it, but I can certainly control what happens inside it. And so that's my job. What about you?
For me, it's very similar to you. We are teaching children first and foremost. We also have a subject area where, unlike in the classrooms where they're up and moving, they're engaging with their peers in ways that they don't get to in other aspects of the school. And so it's the perfect storm for us. It's the perfect way to be able to help students understand their emotions, to help them understand how they respond in social situations or when they're facing challenges. It's also important for us to, as we've spoken about before, understand our students beyond their name, understanding them and understanding what they're bringing and what they're dealing with, so we can create an environment where they can build on those social and emotional skills, so that they can build some resilience, so they feel valued, safe and respected, so that they can start to hopefully respond to some of the traumatic events that they're experiencing outside.
So I guess one question I have is, physical education from the get-go, or at least for the last 50 years, has said that we should do these things. They've said it might not be called trauma, it might be called, but they've said we should teach the affective, the cognitive, the psychomotor. So why is it important now that we move beyond just talking about this, that we move beyond lip service?
That's a great question. I think for me, and certainly my increased knowledge on adverse childhood experiences and trauma in the students that we see, that we teach in schools, that we know in schools, that's become more prevalent for me. And so understanding that we have a role that we can play in helping students to be able to respond positively to some of this trauma that they might be facing. That yes, we've known for years, we do the affective, we do the psychomotor, we do the cognitive, but if we really value the whole child, if we really want to build social and emotional skills in our students, build some resilience, I really think we need to focus on what we do in our gym, what we do in physical education, so that we can move beyond just saying, I want the tap out system, I want students to be nice to each other, I want them to be respectful of equipment. It's more than that for me. we need to get to build those skills in our students to help them to develop. How about for you, Missy?
Yeah, I think you just hit the nail on the head for me. For me, it's, we've given it lip service. We talk about it. We say, be nice to others. We say, take care of equipment. We say, do whatever. But what I learned it the hard way, is that many children and youth do not know how to do that. They don't know, in this case, in my example, how to be nice. They don't know how to take the perspective of others. And so I think in physical education, why it's become so important for me is that we have to give them a safe place to learn those skills, just like you would learn to throw a ball. They have to learn how to take the perspective of others. I need to practice that. I need to get feedback about that, not punishment, but feedback. Just like learning any other skill, they have to be able to know what the skill is and to practice it until it is learned. And that physical education, as we began this conversation, has that potential. And I think, to me, that's the most important thing. And I say, my takeaway message at this point is that what we do has to be intentional. It can't be preaching, but it has to be intentionally designed instruction with practice opportunities for children and youth to learn these skills. So I'll leave that one with you.
One of the many things I loved about what you just said there was that any skill we learn, we're going to make mistakes. Yeah. And that's exactly right when we talk about social emotional development. And I love the way that you spoke about that we give them the opportunity to practice. They get feedback and then they practice again. It's not punishment. Yeah. It is understanding that everyone comes to us with different skills and that we're there to help build on those. The idea of making mistakes in a safe environment and learning from those and building those skills, I think is really crucial in responding to trauma. And it's something we can do in physical education.
I think we talk about trauma, and I think we probably should add this caveat. Trauma can be huge events. Mm-hmm. Trauma can be non-huge events. And in many senses, these are skills that all children and all young people need to know, not just waiting to respond to trauma, but being proactive about what happens when there are traumatic events and learning those skills beforehand rather than afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. The other thing, I guess my take-home message, beyond your intentional pedagogy, which I've told you I've loved for years, but the idea of self-care. We also, I mean, I don't know about you, but these past 10 months, I know that my anxiety level, my stress levels increase, and I go from 0 to 60 much faster than I ever used to before. And so I think it's important in these times to practice self-care and to understand ourselves so that we can help students, because we're in a place where we recognize these signs in ourselves. We've taken time to take care of ourselves so that we can be there for our students, because taking this on board can be quite draining. And in the environment we're in at the minute, I think we're all at that heightened level. And so I think knowing yourself, as we said earlier, and then practicing self-care is also important.
I would agree. So with that, we can ask people to join us. Yeah, on the 26th of January, from 5 to 6 Eastern time. I won't tell the world what time that will be for me.
We'll keep you awake, Missy.
Yeah, okay. 5 to 6 Eastern time for a critical conversation on trauma-informed practices in K-12 PE. Thank you.
Please know that this is going to be conversational. It's not going to be us just talking at you. So hence the term critical conversations. Come and share, learn from each other. Thanks, folks. Have a great day, and we'll see you on the 26th.
Take care.